everyone. Welcome to a new episode of Mom Used to Say No. This time we are going to talk about a very special book. And to talk about this, we have the author herself, is Dr. Nelva Lee. I'm extremely excited to have her today with us. Dr. Nelva Lee is the founder and CEO of Mitio Inco, Medical and Court Interpreting and Translating Training Institute. She also have over 20 years of experience in healthcare and over 10 years in academia as a professor. She is the chair of the board of the Bridge Wellness South, board member of the Department of Community Health of Georgia, and a former candidate for state senate in District 17. I am very honored to have you here today, Doctor, and welcome to Mom Used to Say No.
Thank you for having me, Luis. I'm very grateful to be on your show today.
That's wonderful. So you wrote several books, and this is your latest one, if I'm not wrong, which is Be the Superhero of Your Story. First of all, I love the title. I think it's very powerful, and I think it will connect to a lot of people. So let's start there. Why be the superhero of your story?
So I mentioned a little bit of it in my bio. I have two boys. My husband and I, we've been married for 23 years in August, and we have two boys, and we love watching superheroes movies, right? All the Marvel movies, some DC comic movies. But it's something about superheroes that inspire us, right? To be more and to do more. And everyone always goes, what's your character? What's your favorite character? And if you could choose to be a superhero, who would you be? But honestly, I feel that we all have the potential to be the superhero of our own story. We all are the main protagonists of our own story, whether or not you choose to be or not.
Exactly. Ideally, you have to be the protagonist. And I think you realize if you are self-aware and you have the possibility, the education, and the personality to self-reflect, you realize when you're not being the protagonist of your own story.
Correct.
What was the target audience that you have in mind for this book?
Honestly, my heart breaks for the youth today. Everyone from adolescent to early adulthood. I really feel that specifically COVID really dealt a blow to that particular generation, to that generation. My own children are in that age group. And I'm hearing so many stories of anxiety and depression and how the suicide rates have just skyrocketed, especially since COVID because of all the isolation. And I just felt that this book would speak specifically to that group, that segment.
Wonderful. Yes, I always remember an article that I read a few years ago saying that in around 2050, suicide was going to be, or it's projected to be, the number one cause of death in the world,
Yes.
and depression the number one disease.
Mm.
And I think it's important that we talked about this. I created spaces like this podcast to exactly communicate to people without any feeling of guilt, and with a desire of learning and sending a positive message on how to overcome certain things. When you were writing the book, what was the most difficult part of it?
The chapter about my story. It's always hard when I share with anyone, really, the difficulties that I had in my childhood and in my early adolescence. I personally dealt with depression and PTSD. So whenever I share that story, people see my bio and they see this person that's very accomplished, and they don't anticipate hearing the story and the struggles that I went through. So whenever I share it, I just feel a little bit exposed, if you will, Luis,
Yes.
and vulnerable. But at the same time, if I don't share that story, how can you really relate to the message that I'm letting everyone know that you can get out of that? You're not doomed to be anxious or depressed all of your life. yes, everybody, most people will go through a season of sadness and even a season of depression. Mental health touches every life, every socioeconomic, group. There's no one that's immune to it, whether you are super successful or not. Um, Unfortunately, everyone does not have a roadmap to get out of that, And so I'm hoping this book is just that, a roadmap to not only get out of depression, but also to find some purpose for your life. And so, yes, that chapter was definitely the hardest one to write.
Yes, I can imagine. And I go through it myself, for example, with the podcast, where you are informing people about things, you're interviewing people. And in order to get from others the their deepest truth, you also have to share yours. And you also have to be willing to be vulnerable. This is something that I have been working on for the past 2 years consciously, because
Yes.
I realized that I'm personally, I cannot speak for everybody, of course, but you learn, or I learned, to just disguise whatever wrong thoughts I had, because
Mhm.
people are not supposed to know that you're going through this, because this is too intimate. People don't really want to connect to negative things. And I think it's the wrong approach. It's not about connecting to negative things, it's about broadening the empathy in the world. It's
Exactly.
about understanding that people go through struggles, that hopefully there are chapters and not their whole life.
I
I
love
completely, yeah,
yes.
I completely relate to this message in your book, because I think it's very important. When you talked about, this is one of the chapters of the book, crippled by circumstances. I hear so much, I even go through it myself, that I feel sometimes trapped in my own circumstances. And I find change difficult to produce.
Yeah.
What is your advice, or a little bit what you wrote on the book, but how can you send this little message to people?
So oftentimes, whenever we are going through a really rough time, right? Tough time, rough time, valley of the soul, whatever you want to label it as, whenever we are going through a difficult period in our life, um, it's hard to see how we will ever have a brighter day. It just is. It's really hard in the middle of it to see how this is ever going to get better. Fill in the blank. It could be financial issues. It could be relational issues. It could be, if you're a student, how am I going to get along with my peers, my teachers? If you're married, my spouse, I hate my spouse, or whatever it is. Oftentimes when we're in the middle of it, we just cannot see how this is ever going to get better. And oftentimes that circumstance that it becomes a weight on our shoulders, and it just presses us down. It cripples us. Literally, it just kind of like you can say it's a shackle. It doesn't allow us to move forward. And I often say, you have to have a higher view, like a higher perspective, get out of that particular moment that you're in and look at it from a higher view, a 10, 20 feet view, if you will, and try to see your life from a perspective of your 80-year-old self, for instance, or your 50-year-old self, if you're 20, you know, um, see it from a different perspective, and that will give you a little bit of breathing room, and it will allow you to realize, okay, maybe if I do XYZ, I can see how this can get a little bit better. And just having that little bit of hope can help. Oftentimes, the circumstances removes our hope. And without hope, we can't move forward. And so really and truly is trying to grasp the hope in the situation. But for me, it's always helpful when I have a 20-foot view of it rather than being right in the middle of it.
Right. What kind of exercises have you applied to try to have this eagle view? Because
Right.
sometimes it's easy to explain it and one can understand it, but how can you apply it?
So I have a whole chapter towards the end on weapons, right? On weapons that the superhero can use. And I use all of them. the ones that I use on a daily basis, I will tell you, I start my day with meditation.
Mm.
And it's so important. It's become a very popular thing now. But transcendental meditation, I think, helps immensely. Just really calming the mind and projecting what it is that you want out of your life. I believe that everyone has a purpose, right, for their life. And if once you discover that purpose, you have to hold on to that, no matter what's going on around you. And meditation really helps to really ease the mind and calm it down enough to people to focus on that future self that you see. Prayer, it's different than meditation. Okay,
Mm.
meditation is you calming the mind, but prayer is really speaking to a higher authority. And for me, I'm a Christian, so I speak to my higher authority, but it can vary from everyone. But really, speaking to higher authority about your circumstance really helps. And the reason it helps is because it makes you realize that you're not the authority. You're not the authority of your life. When we think that we are it can really make our world very myopic, right?
Mm.
But when there's higher authority that loves you, when you realize that this higher authority absolutely loves you, it really does ease whatever it is that you're going through. Another, and like I said, I have tons of tidbits, but another one that I would say is practice gratitude.
Mm.
If you can really focus on the things that you are grateful for, because we oftentimes focus so much of our time and effort on the negative. It is said that about 80% of our thoughts are negative, right? That our self-talk is negative. So really, you have to force yourself to think positively, and gratitude is one of those easy ways. I say easy, but really, if you're able to train yourself to be grateful for every little thing. Like if you're going outside and you're seeing the the clouds, be grateful for the clouds. Be grateful for the sun on your skin. Be grateful for the fact that you can hear the birds singing, and you can just go down the laundry list of all the little things that you're grateful for. If you ate breakfast this morning, be grateful that you had food in your stomach. If you slept on a bed, be grateful that you slept on the bed and not on the floor. Little things like that. And after a while, you start being grateful for the big things, to be grateful for the love in your life, be grateful for the opportunities that you have. And once you become a person that just practices gratitude on a regular basis, that can definitely help you have much more of a better perspective.
Totally. I was actually talking about this 2 days ago with a friend, and we came to the same conclusion. Like, we can sometimes be stuck into just a little bit of darkness
Hmm.
and cloudiness in uh, the energy that is around us, whether you are watching a lot of news, whether you are just getting negative things from social media.
Yes.
Even the things that you think that are positive, like everybody else enjoying their life and having these amazing lives on social media, and then it makes you feel kind of sad because you forget that they are presenting an image at the end of the day. It's not their
What?
reality all the time.
Mhm.
And I think it is so important to understand this, and to be grateful. This exercise, I think, is important. I need to start practicing it because I forget easily about the little things. And it's funny because now that the weather is getting better with summer, I start looking at the sun and I think, like, this is nice. It is really nice to see the sun again. And I can honestly tell you that my brain starts calming down. It's an
Mhm.
interesting exercise. It doesn't apply to everything. Of course, everyone's reality might be different. They might not have the possibility to find a moment of calmness. You are a mom. I can imagine what it's like when you have a family and you have work and you have your community. How has been this for you? having to juggle all of the things about life and even the projects that you want to have, because you
Mhm.
wanted to have you wanted to start a family, you wanted to be married. This takes time, commitment, and work.
Yes.
How has this impacted you and the way you view the world?
Yes. Well, I really do believe that my mental health is something that I prioritize. And I think it's because of the fact that I didn't always have that. You know, when I was depressed or anxious or had the PTSD, that is a really tough time when that is what's ruling you. And so when I got out of that, I prioritize never going back there, never having that experience again. So for me, it's so important. Like I do my meditations before I get out of bed. And I have like the 5 to 10 things that I want to get done in the day. Even if it gets done at various times throughout the day, I try to prioritize those things that are going to be the most impactful for my life. And so my mental health, my well-being, my mental well-being is one of those things that I prioritize. Um, and it's just as important to me as exercising. Well, exercise is part of my mental health, my well-being. So I exercise, on 5 to 6 days a week. I eat healthy. That's important for my well-being. I nurture those relationships that I want to have long term, the good ones that are feeding my soul. So these are things that you have to prioritize if you want the outcome of a healthy, well rounded life. And then you can fit in your projects. And then I can fit in my family because I prioritize my family, but they don't come before my well being. Because if mommy's not feeling well, I can't be a good mom. I can't be a good wife to my husband if I'm not, at my best. And so, yes, I think everyone has the time. They just don't prioritize it. We all have 24 hours in a day. It's just how do you prioritize your day?
Completely true, and I agree 100%. And it's an exercise. You have to practice it. You have to remind yourself every minute that is this perhaps the right way for me to do it. For example, I notice a big difference in my routine if I wake up early and I have the time to prepare my breakfast, to shower, and to like get in the mindset now I have to work. And it's completely different when I wake up like 5 minutes before if I'm doing home office, and then okay, because you took it for granted, or like you were a little bit too lazy and then you want to start something fast that requires time, and
Right.
we forget about this, that we need to take time for certain things. Otherwise we are not able to cope with everything that is presenting in the moment. You have mentioned PTSD. You also wrote about it in your book. Can you explain a little bit what was this moment in your life to our listeners?
So I suffered from PTSD for about 2 years. And it was because of the memories of being sexually abused. And so I write about it in my book. And it's documented that sexual abuse, especially if it's from a close family member, can cause those feelings of PTSD in a lot of people. And it crippled me. It really did, Louise. I felt as though I just could not, um, forgive the person. I could not, I felt very much betrayed in addition to feeling a loss of self worth. But I also, every time the memories would come, it was a physical reaction. And so that's what PTSD is, because it's very similar to what soldiers, when they come back from war, it's just like a physical reaction. The body actually reacts as though it was still in the middle of that, of that scene, if you will. And so I went to therapy, and I explained my situation to the therapist, and she explained, oh, this is PTSD, post traumatic stress disorder. And she gave me hope. She said, you can remove the pain from the memory. At that time, I didn't even know that was possible. I said, really? And she gave me some tools to do. And we practice certain things. REM is one of them. And it's like tapping or your finger moving really quickly while you're explaining that very painful circumstance. And it literally like decouples, like, extricates the pain memory, the pain from the memory. And so it's not like a lobotomy. It's not like she gave me amnesia, but she did give me an opportunity to be able to see um, this painful memory without it being something that my body reacted to, and without me even feeling as though it was the worst thing in the world. And then it allowed me to also realize that maybe this happened for a reason. And I talk about that in my book a lot, is because oftentimes it's the way that we label things that causes the pain. And we label them based on how society labels it. So if someone's raped, or if there's a war or whatever, you lose your house. Those are bad things, right?
Right.
What if they're good things? I know it sounds crazy, but what if they're meant for something good for you down the road? What if they happened for something better? And one of my favorite verses in scripture that I hold on to very dearly is the one in Romans 8:28. It says, all things work together for good to those who love God and are called according to his purpose. And all things is all, not good things, not just bad things, all things, good things and bad. And so if everything, whether it's good, quote unquote, or bad, quote unquote, is for my good, then I need to stop labeling things as good or bad. And I just need to accept that when something comes into my life, even if it's painful in the moment, it's going to work out for something better. So I'm always I've gotten to the point where when something quote unquote negative, I say quote because it doesn't have to be negative. I don't have to label it as negative. But if it's painful in the moment, I'm instantly going, okay, what is the lesson here, and how is this going to be for my good? I know it's going to be for my good eventually. Maybe it's for my good in 5 minutes, 5 months, or 5 years. So I'm always looking now for the good in it. And it helps us to decouple the pain from the experience even at the time. And that I believe is really the core message of this book, is that don't label things as negative just because the world labels it as negative. See the opportunity in it. Every single problem is really an opportunity in disguise.
This is very powerful things because you're completely right. We are used to think that everything that happens to other people can happen to us, and it can, but it doesn't mean that it's going to be necessarily negative for us. Let's talk about COVID again. So many people lost their businesses during COVID, but some others started new ones, successful ones. Like
Yes.
even the pandemic meant like a positive change. How many people changed their jobs? And I'm pretty sure a lot of them are happy with that. And that was exactly the point that allowed them to make that decision that otherwise they would have made.
Exactly. Exactly. You're getting it. That's exactly
Yes.
the message of this book.
For you, what was the breaking point of accepting, okay, I really need to seek for help?
Well, I was very fortunate. As I was going through college, I worked my way through college. I was very fortunate in that because I had to pay my own way, I was always looking for ways to make more money. And so I was fortunate in that I started working as a nurse's assistant because I wanted to be a nurse. But then I was told, hey, if you want to make more money, you can work at the psych hospital, the state hospital. Um, and because they needed a lot of help at the time. And I thought, why not? Because of my experience as a nursing home assistant and being in the mental health arena, even though I was a worker, it exposed me to a lot of the different tools that I needed. And so I was able to kind of come by those tools kind of a roundabout way. And I remember a lot of my coworkers, when I would tell them little things about my childhood, they would say, Nelva, you probably could really benefit from therapy. And I kept putting it off, honestly, for
Mhm.
like 1 to 2 years. And then I would have really these relationships that would just end in these beautiful explosions. And I thought, okay, I probably need to find out what's going on that's causing me not to be able to have really good relationships. And I knew it had something to do with my childhood. I knew it did. I knew there was a correlation there. And so, yeah, I would say that just being fortunate enough to being in the mental health world and having loving people just encouraged me to get help for myself. And I'm so grateful that I did. You don't have to, people think that they have to be in therapy for years and years and years. That's not true. If you go with the understanding that this person could really help me maybe think about things differently, it really a few months and they give you the tools necessary and you're fine. But it's worth it because these people, these professionals really do have a lot of really great tools to provide you. Whereas your family members, you might be sharing these things with your family members or your friends, and they don't have the tools to help you. So yes, I definitely would encourage that.
Yes, exactly. And we put so much pressure on ourselves first that we have to find the answers to everything, that we have to take control of our life, which is true to a certain degree. We are responsible to how we define the things that have happened to us and how we move forward. But that doesn't mean that we are going to find all the answers in our head, because sometimes this can be a little trap and it can be negative. Uh, and you forget to listen to the positive voice that, hey, there's a reason for everything, or you can overcome this, and if you feel that you cannot do it, then try and seek for help. For women that have had experienced something similar to you, or what is the first advice that you think about when you want to touch someone's life and
Are you
support them?
referring to the sexual abuse specifically?
Correct.
So, unfortunately, it's not just women, it's men as well. Women much more so, and I think we are much more open about it as far as sharing it with people. But men have also been, there's just as much sexual abuse from in men as well. I would say the first step is to realize that you're not alone. The number one trick that we trick ourselves is thinking I'm the only one this has ever happened to, and that amplifies the pain. Honestly, when you think, this is unfair, this only happened to me, or why did this happen to me? It amplifies the pain to a level where it's crippling. It really is. So number one, unfortunately, sexual abuse, especially in families, is very common. Unfortunately, it's very common. And unfortunately, it's common for people who have been sexually abused to then turn around and abuse others. The reason, they never got help for themselves. So if we're not getting help for ourselves, if we're not healing, we're only going to be perpetrators, whether it's sexual or in other ways, whether it's verbal abuse, physical abuse. So you have to heal yourself. It's not an option. It's not an option. If you're in community with other people, you must be serious about healing whatever wounds you have. Because if you're going around with a big old wound, you're just going to hurt others. Hurt people, hurt people. So number one, take responsibility for the pain that you're going through and seek help. Seek help. That you're completely right, Louise. We think that we can, fix ourselves. Oftentimes, if you have a broken arm, do you really think that you could put that broken arm together yourself?
Hmm.
No, you would go to the hospital. Same thing with mental health issues. You have to seek help from a professional. You have to. And it doesn't have to be forever. I think that the movies, the TV give us this idea that people are in therapy, and some people are. I'm not gonna lie. Some people are in therapy for years and years. But it's been my opinion, it's been my experience that you don't have to do that. You really don't. You go in, you get the help that you need, especially if you're in a crisis. You get the help that you need and you're gone. And same with medication. I've never, thankfully, had to take medication, but I've always been open to it. If I needed it, I would definitely take it. And it helps oftentimes people that need to bridge that little hump, whether it's a chemical imbalance or whatever. So oftentimes it does help. So just be open to that. But medication alone is not the answer. You need to talk to a professional. That would help. I hope that I answered your question.
Yes, completely.
Okay.
And this connects it to another thing that you talked about in your book, and it's connected to heroes, which is superpowers.
Yes.
And superpowers, we sometimes often think that are the ability to fly or the ability to see the future. But I think it's much more grounded, and I would like you to explain it.
Yes. So I would say that my challenges, the challenges that I went through, and because I've overcome those challenges, I have a superpower. My grit is my superpower. My perseverance is my superpower. My patience and now my ability to help others that are going through similar things that I went through is my superpower. And everybody has a superpower. It may not be, like you said, flying or climbing walls. But those superpowers are pretty amazing. Wouldn't you say the ability to go through any circumstance and not let it be, allow it to bother you, kind of like being Teflon to a certain extent. So, and I believe everyone has a superpower. However, not all of our superpowers are honed, are strengthened. And it's only through the tough times that our superpowers are strengthened. It's like you have to have one to have the other. You're not going to have to be able to reveal your true strength unless you have to use it. And you only use it in the tough times. When times are good, you don't need your superpower. Superman is not needed if the world is perfect and peaceful, right?
Correct.
And same with our superpowers. We only need our superpowers when we are in need of them for ourselves initially, but eventually you'll realize that these superpowers, once you've honed them and you strengthen them, they're now able to be used for others and to help others. And so I go through in the book and really talk about the importance of the challenge. It's so important. You know, when you look it up, when you look at a butterfly, they're beautiful, right? They're colorful, they're beautiful, they're vibrant. But they, at one point, were a caterpillar and in a chrysalis, right? They have to go through that chrysalis experience to become the butterfly. If you were to cut a little hole in that chrysalis and go, oh, let's let him out before he goes through the full transformation, they actually will die. A butterfly needs that struggle, needs to be able to push through that chrysalis in order to be able to fly. And same with us. We need the challenge. We need it. So don't despise a challenge. The challenge is there to make us stronger and to really develop and show the world our true strength.
Completely agree with that. And when you reach a certain age, you know that these moments or those moments in your life are really defining exactly who you are becoming and how
Yes.
powerful you are.
Yes.
I think many people want to know, and I want to know, who's your favorite superhero?
Well, I have quite a few. I would say if I had to choose one, it would be Spider-Man. I do
Me
love Spider.
too.
Yes.
Me too. It's my favorite.
Yes, but I love, like I said, I love all Marvel movies. Like we are the ones, we're like that family that as soon as it comes out, we go to see.
Wonderful.
So we absolutely love superhero stories because they're inspiring. You know, I talk about in the book how the villain, you know, they make us want to fight, right? Whenever there's a villain in the movie, they make us they bring out the superhero desire in us, right?
Hmm.
And our circumstances and our challenges, they're just like villains in our own life. And they should inspire us to rise to the occasion and be courageous, just like all of our favorite superheroes.
Personally, I am going through in this moment in my life through a tough situation, specifically at work,
Hmm.
where I have allowed that someone else has a lot of power in my head. Like I
Mm.
have these fights inside my head with a
Yeah.
person or with the circumstances. And I am currently going through the struggle of remembering that I need to make the separation. I really need to say, like, what are the facts and what are the fantasies that I'm creating about something. And then, and it's hard. It's
Mhm.
difficult. It's very difficult to take away someone's power over you. And this is why the your book resonated with me as well, and this conversation, because these are day-to-day struggles that sometimes we don't even realize that, oh, this is actually a problem. We are just used to the toxicity.
Mm.
And once you realize that these things are happening, that there are certain behaviors, there's an environment that it's not positive for your health, for yourself, etc., then you start questioning things. And you either, what I was going through, or what I did at the beginning was just fighting and just going against it. And then this is not working because you're not changing anything. Or some people just escape and they,
Mhm.
for example, quit and they go away. And I had the fortune to have a partner that has always been open to have discussions with me about this situation. And we reached the point to understanding that I need to face this, otherwise I can replicate it in another job.
Mhm.
So this is the challenge. The challenge really is to understand that sometimes we do have to face our villains because they can pop out again in some near future.
Yes, you have to face them head on and take, full responsibility. I talk a lot about responsibility because we often think things are happening to us. Um, but I love Tony Robbins. He always says things don't happen to you, they happen for you. So think about that. And in this particular situation, a good question to ask is, what have I taught this person on how to treat me? Because everyone treats you how we have taught them to treat us, or they treat everybody that way. But you have to let them know you might treat everyone else that way, but not me.
Mhm.
I'm the one person you're not going to treat that way. So you have to identify the dynamic, and you're completely right. Oftentimes we think the best way to cut that dynamic is to fight back, but maybe there's other ways. Maybe there's a different way to address that situation with that person. So I would encourage you to identify what you can do better in your own responses to this person. Um, Oftentimes it's just really realizing our own worth that makes all the difference. And you might think, oh, I'm a very positive, confident person, but around some people they don't see your worth, and you need to make them see your worth.
Those are little keywords, I think, that when you hear them, you feel okay. And it's not going to change overnight, but they are there, and they this is like a seed that is growing. And the idea is that for you to understand your worth, and that if it's not appreciated, then you have to move on. If you cannot make them see it, then or perhaps you can change them, and
Hmm.
they really can treat you different, like you said.
Yes.
I'm curious about something, and I think your book is the product of all your experience, of course. But you mentioned that you want to help people. You are a very religious woman, but you were also, I don't know if you're still navigating in politics, like if you still want to work on that, because I was an intern in an embassy once,
Okay.
and I'm also a person that's very creative and that wants to help people. And once you work for government institutions, you realize that that's not as easy as it sounds. How do you match these experiences, and how do they define you what you want to do in the future?
So thanks for asking about that. Yes, I do believe that I do have a future in politics. I'm probably going to be running for a major office in the next couple of years, just kind of waiting for my youngest to not need his mommy as much. Priorities again. Politics is always going to be there. He's still in middle school, not quite in high school yet. So, but yes, I do believe that all of my experiences will help me to become a much better statesman, politician, be able to really connect better with my constituents. Politics is a very dirty, I would say, a dirty place to be. When I did run for office, I met with a lot of politicians, and some of them were amazing people. We always think that all politicians are horrible. No.
Yeah.
Some of them are honestly amazing people that really are in politics for the right reason. You don't hear anything about those. You only hear about the wrong, bad people. But some are very sleazy and they really will stab you in the back. And you have to be able to understand people and to understand people's motives and discern them very quickly when you work in politics. And really, it's something that's used in every, in your office environment. I'm sure you have to be able to discern who is really for me, who's really working to help me advance, or who can I work alongside with and collaborate with, and who can't I? And it's important to do that because it saves our energy, right? I love I was listening to your podcast, and I love the one that you had about getting rid of toxic friends. That's courageous. Not everyone can do that. They hold on to toxicity in their life forever, whether it's a toxic friend or a toxic family member. That takes courage to say, you know what, you're not really helping me grow. You're not helping me get to where I want to be. So I'm sorry, but I can no longer be in relationship with you. And that's healthy for you. Being able to recognize that I need to be able to have people in my life that are going to move me forward. And it's the same in a work situation, and it's the same when you're in government. And just being able to recognize that and say, I am worth being around people that care about me. It's the bottom line. Yeah.
Completely. And on that note, I want to thank you so much for being a part of this wonderful episode. I think we tapped into so many important things. In media, we see that they are talking about this, like take care of yourself and mental health. But we really need more tools. We really need more like how to do this, because otherwise then it's just like a marketing strategy. And I think we touched this here, and I am so glad for you to have participated today. Where can people find your book?
So you can go to Amazon and just type in "Be the Superhero of Your Story." It's actually translated in Spanish as well. Sé el superhéroe de tu historia. And it's going to be translated in Chinese. I have someone that's working on that as well. But yeah, just go to Amazon, type that in, and you can get my book. Yes. Thank you.
Perfect. So you guys heard it. Thank you, Dr. Lee. Again, I learned a lot from you. Thank you for allowing us to see you, to allow yourself to be vulnerable. It is not an easy subject to talk about. And I think this will help a lot of people to hear your life story. So thank you again for being part of Mom Used to Say No.
Thank you for having me.
Till next time. Bye-bye.
Adios.